Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is 6:11 a.m. East Coast time, Friday. Happy Friday, June 28th. 2 days till the birthday. How you doing? And we're going to break down a 3-game WNBA slate today. Let me tell you one thing. It's 6:12 or 6:11 a.m. right now. I've probably been up for over an hour just researching this. This is probably the most that I put into a WNBA slate. There's a lot of nuances to it. There's a lot of different pieces in terms of why the minutes are changing for players that are injured, players that are going overseas, and how that impacted their last game or how it's going to impact this game. And potentially players coming back. So a lot of things that I'm trying to work through, hash through, matchups specifically per position, per just what the overall minutes are going to be based on the matchups, if it's a bigs matchup and how that's going to impact some players' minutes. So a lot of things that I broke down, have a whole, I don't think anybody can see this, a whole list of notes here that I want to hit on, but make this video digestible. Anything that I don't get to, I might make a podcast over on Patreon. So welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Sal Vetri. Cover daily fantasy sports in the NFL, NBA, MLB, which I'll have an MLB video out and an article later today, and the WNBA streets. Golf is kind of taking a back seat right now as I get more focus on WNBA and MLB, right? So that's where we're at now. If you hit the like button, it helps me, but the thing that helps me the most is subscribing to the channel. Totally free, takes 2 seconds. I want to give you that little urge. If you could take 2 seconds. There you go. Hopefully there it works. And there's a fly on my camera lights right now. Terrible. But I appreciate it if you do hit subscribe. The notification bell is there as well. That helps me build an audience, which allows me to put the YouTube content out for free, right? I'm spending probably 2 to 3 hours every single morning from 5 to 8 producing the YouTube content, uploading it, doing all the stuff that you guys don't see, the SEO stuff. So it allows me to continue to do that for free and still be able to make a living from a third-party advertiser, whatever it might be. So I appreciate that. And yeah, I have a Patreon where I do exclusive podcasts, not every single day. I don't want to say that I'm going to do a podcast every single day for the WNBA over there, but as often as I can, shrinking down my player pool. I'm going to try and get to more strategy podcasts as well. That can be found down below, as well as player projections. I do player projections for the WNBA. They help very well for cash. They could also be leveraged for tournaments. So you can get those all down below on Patreon. Have MLB articles on Patreon as well, some other things. So that's exclusive to Patreon. Check that out. But let's dive into this slate. Subscribe, like if you get any value throughout any point of the video. Comment down below as well, either now or during it, what you like about these videos. Just if you appreciate anything, what you hate, try and be not an asshole about it. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So Wnba Dfs popped up on the injury report, and she is going to be most likely probable today. She has this ankle injury going on, and it seems like she tweaked it in practice, so keep an eye on this. All reports show that she's going to be playing. She averages 35 minutes a game, so that might be a little bit tweaked, but right now I have her as a full go unless we hear otherwise. Jewell Loyd only played, 4 minutes in the last game and then got injured, so Jewell Loyd getting injured is a big deal. I mean, this is going to affect Jordan Canada, who came back the last game and got a big run because Jewell Loyd got hurt early on. Jordan Canada checked in right after Jewell Loyd got hurt for those 4 minutes, so I would fully expect Canada to be starting in this game. And Canada, I believe, also closed that game out. So, I mean, with no Jewell Loyd, you can expect that to be the case. And then Shavonte Zealous as well should see increased run, somebody who still saw 26 minutes even with Canada back. And I imagine she picks up a few extra minutes with Jewell Loyd being out. You can say that Sammy Whitcomb will see some minutes, whatever you want to do with the tertiary options from the Seattle team. But for the most part, it'll be Jordan Canada, Shavonte Zealous getting the biggest bump. Ivana Turner, she went overseas. She didn't play in the last game for the first time, and this affected everybody. Blow it all up. This is where this slate can get really weird, is in Phoenix with the guards. So, I mean, we're already looking at Wnba Dfs being questionable today or more so probable, whatever it is there. But Ivana Turner was seeing 23 minutes a game. Then she left to go overseas in the last game, and you saw an immediate minute spike for Brianne January and Leilani Mitchell. Essence Carson's also saw a minute spike, but they vowed to give her more minutes the game before. So she saw 30 minutes back-to-back games, which is pretty good based on her price point. So you're going to get an impact for Brianna Turner or Brianna January for Turner being out, Leilani Mitchell for Turner being out. These players we're seeing in the mid to high 30s, and when you break it down, yeah, Wnba Dfs out there soaking up a ton of minutes at the guard position, but there's 2 other spots on that floor that they usually run some guards at, and they don't have that much depth at the guard behind Brianna January, behind Leilani Mitchell, behind Essence Carson's. Because Diana Taurasi has been out. So those 3 players, if Taurasi doesn't come back today, are going to be in a fantastic spot. I'll have interest in all 3 of them, mainly Carson because she's the cheapest and getting that run consistently. Leilani Mitchell coming off a great game, probably gets higher ownership, but I prefer her to Brianna January just on point per minute basis. So this was where this slate can get very tricky in terms of overall the Phoenix guard situation against Indiana today. And we're not even done yet in terms of why it can get tricky. Chloe Jackson was off the injury report. The beat writer for Chicago reported last night. Look, she probably isn't a huge factor here, but it's just good to note that there's probably 5 less minutes to go around for the team today. I think I have Chloe Jackson at 4 or 5. She has the potential to see double-digit minutes on this team, but coming back from an injury that has kept her out for probably closer to a month now, I imagine they work her back in slowly. Diana Taurasi, whatever you want to say, she is questionable today. This is a player who last year was one of the best players in the WNBA, right? Averaging 1.23 point per minute, 30 minutes per game last year. Those are her stats from last year. That's why I have her kind of glossed over in yellow. And I had the impacted players blow it all up. She's questionable today. If she actually makes her season debut, she's been dealing with this back injury. Who knows how many minutes she gets. Hopefully we get sort of a look at that. If she's not starting, I would probably cap her around 15 minutes because usually when players don't start, if there's no other injuries on the team that they are forced kind of into action, then it's likely, or foul trouble, it's likely she sees somewhere in the mid-teens in minutes. If somehow she comes back and she's starting, well, blow it all up. It's going to obviously impact Wnba a big amount. When you get a 1.23 fantasy point per minute player coming back, yeah, it's going to impact you. It's going to impact the minutes for the Brianne Januaries, the Lilana Mitchells, and the Essence Carsons, who I all just said I have a ton of interest in today. All 3 of them, especially Mitchell and Carson, it's going to impact them a very good amount. They're probably all going to get their points or minutes shaved to a point where I don't even want to get to them. So, yeah, if Taurasi is in today, depending on starting or off the bench, either way, it's going to impact this slate. I'm hoping she's out so we just don't have to deal with it, but eventually we will have to deal with it. So if she's in, blow the entire slate up because it's going to impact not only herself, not only Bonner, but January, Mitchell, and Carson, who are all good values today, especially Mitchell and Carson. Once again, it will get weird. So what do I mean by this? And later in the day, you'll have this injury news is, if you want, you can follow me on Twitter at @SalvetriDFS. I will have updates on the situation over there. I have a list for the WNBA. You could also follow that just in case I'm, doing real life things, hanging out with the girlfriend, enjoying my Friday night, not worrying too much about the guard situation in Phoenix and the WNBA on my Friday night. But I'll try to do as many updates as I can. I have notifications on. But the real thing will be following me on Patreon. You can support me there. I'll have projection updates, or at least an update to an article or a podcast, whatever I put out today. I'll kind of add a note into the little comment section / article section of that. Rebecca Allen is most likely doubtful. They said they would evaluate her in 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. She was seeing decent minutes on this team for the first couple of games, so check her out because she can alter this New York team, who is already now kind of lacking depth at this forward position with Amanda B going overseas. They're forced to start Rashonda Gray, which isn't a terrible thing, but now they're putting Rain Coke in and just other players that aren't that great. And Rebecca Allen, point per minute wise, is actually pretty good. So if she's back today, I have her as doubtful, but there isn't an actual designation. It just said 2 weeks she'll be reevaluated, and it's been like 17 days since then. So I imagine at some point we'll get an update. Keep an eye on that. So that's the injury news. Lots of things going on. The Phoenix guard situation is going to be crazy. And Seattle with no Lloyd is something that might go over noticed or under noticed due to that. So let's move on to the target offense sheet. If you got any value from any of that information, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at SalvetriDFS. If you're not following me there yet, that also helps me, but it also helps you in terms of updates, other things. So thank you. Target offense sheet. I could blow this up a little bit or a lot of bit for people. Oh, look at that. There you go. So target offense sheet, just looking at game totals, I kind of project these myself. I'm probably terrible at them, but I try and get as good or close as I can based on pace, based on teams' overall points and defense efficiency ratings. The big thing that I like to look at is pace. How fast are they going to play? How many possessions is each team going to get based on the league average and based on how fast these teams play individually? So today, Dallas and New York, Dallas is just a terrible team overall. Outside of being really good against the guards on defense, they're just really bad on offense, averaging, I think, below 70 real points per game still. I have them projected here because they're playing New York, so they're projected to be in a pace-up spot, gaining almost 4 possessions, which is pretty noteworthy. And they're going to have an advantage in terms of their guards against New York. New York actually struggles defending that guard position. And then New York pace down spot. So some of the New York players, 4 possessions less. It doesn't affect individually anybody that drastic, but overall their team production in terms of wanting to stack them might become an issue. And I would probably avoid it in general. On a 3-game slate where you have 6 teams, you don't need to stack as much unless one game stands out over the rest, which maybe Chicago and Seattle does. But for me, none of these games really stand out in terms of stacking one over the other because there is value in Phoenix. Things can get wonky in Phoenix. I believe that there is value in Dallas, or even on the top and sort of middle range in Dallas. I like their top players, which kind of grade out in the middle range of the entire slate. And then I think there's nice pieces to pick from the rest of these games. Seattle, obviously, with Jewel Whiteout's going to open up some value. So In terms of the context, yeah, you're going to get a big pace up spot, a bigger, higher total in this Seattle-Chicago game, a pace of 78.9. It's going to be a pace up spot for Seattle, 2 possessions, a slight, basically a neutral spot for Chicago, who does play at one of the league's highest paces, similar to New York. In the Indiana and Phoenix game, it's going to be slow. Both these teams play slow. They play at exactly the same pace at this point, which is a very rare thing to see. But it's going to be a slow-paced game, so pace down spot for the entire team. You're going to get 6 possessions less, maybe 6.5 in the Indiana-Phoenix game than the Chicago and Seattle game. So when you're trying to compare across games, yeah, it makes sense to maybe lean towards Chicago and Seattle, but the price is going to indicate that. And when you're trying to find value in that Indiana-Phoenix game, which I think there's a good amount of, especially on the Phoenix side like we discussed, the pace kind of gets thrown out the window at that point. As long as you're not playing 5 players from this game, 4 players from this game, then you should be fine in terms of maximizing your upside. So that's where we're at right now in target offense sheet. Not really concerned about stacking a single game. The paces, obviously, in Chicago and Seattle and Dallas and New York are much better than Indy and Phoenix, but you're not looking to get 3 players or 4 players anyway from Indy and Phoenix. So it doesn't really matter. I just wouldn't stack. That's just a kind of a rundown of it. And let's move on to early interest. So early interest. There's some stats that aren't pulling just because I have to do better VLOOKUPs or include a bigger range of data due to just updating some stuff. But early interest, I have it filtered by top salary. Now, again, it is 6:22 in the morning. There is like 13 hours till these games starts. We are obviously waiting on some very important news in Phoenix if Diana Taurasi is going to be playing today. And that's going to change a lot of things for me. Also going back in and doing my second run at the minutes projections. It just took me a while to do the first, the longest that it's ever taken, over about an hour and a half instead of closer to an hour. So those are all things that will be updated for the Patreon people. My projections, these are not my projections. My projections are right here, actually. I have all the point per minute kind of covered, blacked out, so nobody can really see them. This is projected or filtered by price, but these are my projections. You have your minute projections all the way down. So if you want to see the actual points that I have, the value for who's like a good value today in my eyes, and the actual points that I'm projecting, you can go over to Patreon, link down below. Check that out. You also get some exclusive content in the form of podcasts and just short write-ups. But early interest at this early in the morning, players that I think either grade out as a nice value, players that I've kind of already touched on, good spots defensively or offensively, I guess you can say. We'll kind of hit on them. Natasha Howard at 10-8. Yeah, I mean, the floor in this girl is like, what, in the mid-30s? And she gets a very beneficial matchup today. I think it's a bottom third matchup against this Chicago team, which might actually seem surprising, but they're not that great on defense. Tina Charles against Dallas today is just going to be an overwhelming matchup for Charles. And look, the minutes are just there. Amanda B is out. She's seen, over 35 minutes in like 3 straight games now. I have her projected for over 35 today. For Tina Charles, it's just a great spot against a weak Dallas team. Shanae Parker, I don't like getting to Shanae Parker because she only averages like 20 minutes a game. And yeah, she's a great point per minute monster, like 1.3. She's very effective when she's out there. But this matchup is probably going to force her hand to be out there a little bit more against Seattle and Natasha Howard. Earlier this year when they played, she saw, I think, a season high in minutes at 23. And she played really well during that time. Now, obviously, she's going to go out there and go up against Natasha Howard, which is no cakewalk. But if you get more minutes out of a 1.3 fantasy point per minute player, they're going to be more productive. So 8,700 seems like a steep price point on this slate for me. But on a first look, it's just interesting because I do think she sees the upper range to her minutes limit, and she's a very productive player. So it's worth noting that she is interesting today. The next 2 players from Dallas, I have a good amount of interest in both of them because New York has been dead last against the guard position, or maybe second to last. They're bottom 2 in the league against the guard position in terms of fantasy this year. Elisha Gray at 8,200 has not been producing that well in terms of fantasy point per minute. Her price has been coming down all year long. She's getting right around 30, 32 minutes a game. I have her at 32 today. But $8,000, Wnba Dfs. She has been playing more and more minutes, back-to-back games. They kind of vowed to give this rookie more minutes. Now she has an ideal matchup. I have her projected for 30-plus minutes, and she's seen that in the past 2 games and sort of getting more run in this offense. She's $8,000. She grades out as one of the better value plays in the slate today. Iguale against New York, which is one of the best matchups in the slate today for her position. I like that a lot. Natalie Cohen, $6,800 here. Look, let me look at this. Yeah, so she gets a price drop of like $12,000. Maybe it's because it's a 3-game slate, but this is a little bit too much in my opinion. She closed the last game out, meaning she played like the entire 4th quarter in terms of this Natalie chick, and she closing the whole last game out. And then if she starts, which she hasn't yet to start, she's come in after a few minutes. she's just a fantastic play today against Phoenix. The matchup might be a little bit tough, but 6,800 is too cheap for somebody who might go out there and realistically average around a point per minute and play, I don't know, 28 minutes today. So yeah, it's way too cheap. There's a lot of players who are in that same price range, if not cheaper though, that I do find just as interesting. So it's just a matter of, is there just too much value to actually get to her, which on this slate there's a ton. So no Jewel Lloyd. This is where you start to get to some of the value plays due to injuries. No Jewel Lloyd today. Jordan Canada becomes an obvious play for me. She saw, 26 minutes in the last game. I believe she's going to touch closer to 30, if not more, in this game. 5,800 is just way too cheap today. With no Jewel Lloyd being out there, she gets a minutes bump as well as some other Seattle players that we have. We've kind of touched on Cervantes Zealous. I don't know if Blake Dietrichs will see any run. She only saw 1 minute or 2 minutes even in the last game with Lloyd being out for the majority of it. But for the most part, in terms of point per minute and minutes overall for fantasy, Jordan Canada is the player that I would go to from Seattle. Outside of the obvious for me, Natasha Howard for production upside. With no Jewel Lloyd, it shouldn't be understated that there's a lot of production and shots that are going to go away, and this offense is going to have to get filtered more so through Natasha Howard and also Jordan Canada. And now we get to the Phoenix situation. Leilani Mitchell and Carson. You can also go to Brianne January. That's fine. It's early in the morning. I think she's interesting as well. We kind of touched on it. But Leilani Mitchell, she saw a big bump in minutes. She obviously saw her best game of the year the last time out. And her price only goes up, $300. She's still way too cheap. She should be closer to a 7K player, mid 6K at a minimum. It just makes it really easy to get back to. The matchup isn't brutal here. And 5,700 is too cheap for a player who now is definitely going to see increased minutes due to just all the things going on here. And obviously, if you get something wrong with Bonner here, which she's out, then it gets even better for these guards from Phoenix. But with Turner being out, it's a huge bump. Obviously, keep an eye on Teresi. Essence Carson, same thing. They vowed to give her more minutes. She saw those more minutes, and she benefited from even getting stable minutes. Back-to-back games now, 30+. That stability in the second one obviously came from Turner going overseas. Essence Carson, she's not as good of a fantasy point per minute monster, or not monster, but player as Mitchell is. Obviously a less or a smaller sample size for Carson, so maybe that kind of stables out. But I like both of these players here. They're only priced $200 apart. I probably get to Mitchell more so than Carson, but I think both of them are very viable. Isabel Harrison. So Harrison started the last game and she closed it out. So she played huge minutes in the last game and she played really well. If that continues to happen, it is a tougher matchup than it may seem today. But this is another just Dallas player here that I do like. She's at the forward position, so it's not as beneficial as being a guard like Gray or Wnba. But Harrison is too cheap at 5,400. When you compare across kind of different positions across the league between Mitchell and Carson, I'd probably get to more Mitchell for only $300 more. But 5,400, again, too cheap. Rashonda Gray, $5,000. Grades out as one of the best value plays on the slate if I give her 24 minutes. She might only get 20 minutes. She might only get 22. But with Amanda B overseas, she started the last game for New York, and they just don't have guard depth. If Rebecca Allen remains out, and I imagine she does, we haven't had any updates, they'd have no guard depth at all. She's going to be forced into minutes here. I have her at 24 minutes today. If she does that, she grades out as the best value play on the slate of $5,000. Now, again, this is because she's $5,000. Leilani Mitchell at 5,700 has way more upside, both in terms of minutes and playing 10 plus more minutes potentially today, and just point per minute production. But that shouldn't kind of just cancel out Gray, who at $5,000, if I put her in for 24 minutes, she grades out for like 23 fantasy points, 22 fantasy points. That's pretty dang good. So outside of that, Diana Taurasi, she is 3,200. The price is broken. Look, if she comes back today, I don't expect her to come back, play her 30 minutes a game like she did last year, average 20 fantasy points. No, she's probably going to work her way back in, but the point is that it will impact the rest of these Phoenix guard and really blow up the whole slate. So that's where I'm at with early interest. I'll touch on some other notes that I wrote down here just to give it all justice. Brittany Griner has been averaging like 35 minutes a game. She only saw 31 in the last one, but don't look too much into that. Because she had 5 personal fouls. She has picked up foul trouble in other games, but these ones were just set up in a way that they kind of had to take her out to preserve her for the rest of the game. Check on Gray. Make sure that Rashonda Gray is starting for this game. Amanda B, like I said, she was out the last game. She is now overseas, and Gray got that start. Check on her. Make sure she's starting. There's just so much value in the 5K range today. I cannot overstate that with Jordan Canada, Leilani Mitchell, Isabel Harrison, Carson, and Gray. Maybe I'll do just a show where I rank them on Patreon later, but I don't want to. I'm not definitely guaranteeing a podcast later today, just due to the amount of content that I pumped out the last 3 days. I might take a little bit of a break this afternoon, but maybe not. But the projections will be on there. Some other things that I just wanted to point out. Azura Stevens, her minutes plummeted in the last game. A lot of this has to do with just certain players coming back into the game. We can kind of touch on Azura Stevens really quickly. The main thing for that I see is just Isabel Harrison coming back and playing, 32 minutes in the last game. So that's where kind of her minutes plummet. She only had 8. I imagine she stabilizes closer. I have her at 15 today, as you can see. But that's something that is scary, something that with Harrison coming back might be telling of what's to come. Quigley's minutes jumped in the last game, but mainly because she got hot. So Allie Quigley, I wouldn't go back there just thinking that, okay, now she's all of a sudden this great shooter. Don't let that recency bias fool you. She had a really good game. She got to stay on the court more and take more shots because she was making her shots. That's not something that we see out of her usually. And then I just have written down that Charles and Howard have great matchups today, and they're two of the best plays in the slate, in my opinion, at their price points, and the amount of value on this slate in the 5K range will let you get to them and maybe even another stud very easily. I don't have as much interest in Bonner today because I want to get to a lot of, Jordan Cannon is back and kind of fully healthy, so that's going to take somewhat away. I don't know why I just said Jordan Canada for Bonner. I'm losing my mind now. I meant for Lloyd. So I have interest in Canada. But in terms of Bonner, I have interest more so in the guards there for value on the same team. And I don't want to be stacking up that Phoenix game because we kind of already identified that it's a slower paced spot. And I want more forwards. In the WNBA, getting to 4 forwards in your lineup. And if you have to pay a high dollar for them, I'd rather do that than getting to guards. They're just more stable. And we've seen that over the last few games with Bonner as her points have started to fluctuate a little bit. Dallas is number 1 versus the guard as of right now, so that's going to hurt Akia Nurse, who I believe played the full game the last time out at her price point with her matchup. And again, wanting to get to more forwards, I'm not going to get there. Same can be said for Boyd. I never get to Asia Durr, but same could also be said for her. The price drop for Natalie Cohen, if she starts today, it's just way too cheap. Even if it is $6,800, if you can fit it in, it's a smart place to go to in a very beneficial matchup. I'm getting to all of the guards not named Bonner today, so that's what I have written down here as well. And then Parker should see more minutes versus Seattle. We already touched on that. Shanae Parker, 8,700. Probably too much for me to get to today in terms of the context of the slate. I'd probably go to 3 studs and 3 just 5K players. So that's where I'm at right now. If you want the projections, like I said right here, there are projections here, point projections. You can head over to Patreon. I do MLB content as well in terms of articles. I do a rankings with an analysis, around 1,000-word article each day for the slates. So that's it as of right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like the video. If you watched the whole thing, let me know. Comment down below that you watched the whole thing. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. Also, hit the subscribe button before you leave, please. I beg of you. Okay, thank you so much. Peace out, gang. Enjoy your weekend. Or I'll probably be back tomorrow, but enjoy your Friday. Peace.